Hello, this is Georgina Rose, and welcome to the Darling YouTube channel. On this channel, we discuss everything related to mysticism, religion, and everything on the fringe of esoterica. I am your host, Georgina Rose. I am a perennialist and polytheist, and let's get into the video. So I do want to say one thing. We're going to be discussing sex magic in this video. Because of how YouTube works, I'm going to have to be talking around things and speaking in some kind of strange ways, just because I don't want YouTube to catapult me into the sun. That's why I've never made this video up to this point. So please bear with me and the weird things I'm gonna say to attempt to keep this video uncensored and on YouTube. But on the off chance it is censored or age restricted or demonetized, I would really appreciate if you would check out my Patreon so that I can keep making videos, because I'm kind of expecting something might happen to the monetization status of this video, which would be unfortunate, but honestly probable. But I'm gonna give it an earnest try to discuss this subject without YouTube wanting to murder me. So, sex magic. Why is it important? What is it? And why would you do that? So to begin, the reason why people have such an idea about this is because I think they have a very specific image when they hear the term sex magic. They think of that scene in Strange Angel. I don't know if you guys have seen Strange Angel. It's a historic drama that CBS created about Jack Parsons and Thelema. And there's this scene where there's all these like people in black robes, and there's this sky-clad woman, and there's like a knife, and it's very scary and spooky, and ooh, that's not always what it looks like, because in fact this practice is really ancient and far predates stuff like that, and it's not that scary. As well, I think there is an idea that people who engage in sex magic are inherently promiscuous or sleeping around, and if you want to do that, your choice, but you do not have to do that to engage in these practices. You can engage in these practices with anyone you have a relationship with, and some of these practices are solo in nature. So there's no need to feel like you have to be living a certain lifestyle to engage in these practices, or to feel shame that you're not living a specific lifestyle and you engage in them regardless. So just know, no matter what life you're living or what your relationship life looks like, you can still engage in these practices. So I think we need to begin with discussing that this is a very ancient thing. The first practices that we know that are ritualistically intertwined with sex go back to the ancient Mesopotamians. There was a goddess known as Inanna Ishtar who had pretty exhaustive rituals involving this subject in her temples, and her priestesses would engage in this practice as a way of healing their congregants and as a way to get closer to that goddess. It was a devotional practice. And as we look around the pagan world, often you will see cults to goddesses like Venus, Astarte, involving some of these practices. As well, you will see when there are specific holidays, certain fertility rites, and all sorts of things that revolve around this subject. So it's a very ancient thing. And also, I want to bring up that this is not something that has wholly existed in the pagan world. I think a lot of people think this is like a pagan thing or an occultist thing, and that is not true. In fact, if we look at Kabbalah, the Jewish system of mysticism, and Christian Kabbalah, the Renaissance Christian mystics, they also engaged and discussed this type of practice very heavily in their work. Now, it comes into the modern consciousness by way of the Victorian occult revival, with some of the people adjacent to Theosophy really bringing it into the forefront, as Theosophy would be the basis of the New Age and a lot of popular spirituality, and as well, infamously, Aleister Crowley and the religion of Thelema would very heavily emphasize these practices in their metaphysics and in their initiatory processes. As you go through initiatory processes through Thelema, this stuff is taught that you may replicate then with, your private life. So all these practices are really ancient, and they are pretty common amongst mystery cults and amongst people who are self-proclaimed mystics. So why are people so convinced that this act has a metaphysical power to it? Why does it seem that universally and around the world, people are trying to ritualize this action? Well, I think we need to look at what it is. And to understand what it is, I think we need to take a look at metaphysics itself. So if you are familiar with the Kabbalistic tree of life, I'm going to be using the Hermetic version of it. It is essentially a diagram that breaks out how things emanate through the universe and come down to the material plane. It's like a sort of map or guideline or basically outline of how the universe works. And everything begins with nothingness, and then there is what is known as the point in the circle. And this is in which all chains of being emerge, that singular bang, that beginning, that start, the starting point. And then from there, it descends outwards through many spheres of existence, many levels, all the way down to our material plane, which is where we reside. And when you look at the tree of life, you'll notice that it's divided into these triangle-looking structures, right? There'll be the top sphere, and then coming from that, there will be two more. And then those two will interface, and then it'll go like that. And this is known as the lightning strike. You can draw it like literally like a lightning zap down the tree, and that is how things emanate into existence and then come into being on our material plane. And so when we look at these triads, which will be this way and then this way after it crosses through, we're seeing like basically emanation come down. So it starts here and goes to here. And this is going to be your divine masculine and your divine feminine. So I'm going to be using my left and right. I don't know if it's flipped for you guys. It might be flipped. If it's flipped, I'm so sorry. But so on my left side, we have what is known as the pillar of severity, or the divine feminine pillar. And then on the right, there is the pillar of mercy, which is the divine masculine pillar. And basically these represent the two sides of being. So we can understand most of the universe as two sort of different sides of the coin. And the reason why they are different is because one is active and one is receptive. So think about it like this, right? Things come down from here and they go to that masculine pillar, and basically see it as the masculine pillar as endless growth and expansion, right? Everything comes into being from the masculine. It shoots outwards. You see, you start seeing where there's a parallel to what humans do. Use your brain. So it pushes outwards and it's endless creation, endless generation, endless force. The masculine is the creative, the generative. And then it reaches that other side of the line, which is the divine feminine. And the divine feminine is the receiving. So it takes this endless force. Come on, you see it? And it shapes it into being. And then from that divine feminine, it is given structure and order. Because if there was endless creation with no destruction or no shaping, things would not make sense. Things metaphysically would not work, right? The whole world would fall apart. And so this gives it all that form. Think of it as this is like an endless flow of water. And then this is a vase that's able to take that water and give it shape. So that then, you see it goes to the one below it. It creates the flowers. So you can put the flowers in the vase and the flowers will grow. And this is that pillar of equilibrium, which is a combination of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And this goes all the way down until we get to one thing that is in the center of the pillar, which is the material plane, or Malkut, right? So seeing that, we are seeing creation itself. And obviously on these higher levels of existence, it is not literally having sex as humans do. No. But we are a microcosm of what is higher, because all of divinity is understood through microcosms and macrocosm, which is best explained through the phrasing, as above, so below. What happens above happens here. And so if we're seeing this creative process happening above, what happens here in the material world? And that is the physical act. So putting all that together, we can understand the physical act is a replication of the divine chain of being and the divine process. This means that this physical act holds immense power, and that is why it is the act that generates human life when it is done. So we can also understand that since everything that happens on this plane does not solely happen on this plane, right? We are a human being. You're human and you're in the material plane, but you also exist on these higher planes, and you also have a body of light, a metaphysical body, an aura, whatever you want to call it. And so when you engage in this act, you are engaging it and creating in a physical way, but you also are engaging your body of light and creating in a metaphysical way. And so you can harness this and replicate pretty much that divine process to create things that are not literal children. You can create new opportunities in your life. You can create, this is great for results magic, by the way. You can focus things towards results magic. You can make all sorts of changes in your life using the power of this act, because it is a replication of the divine process. And if we understand this as above, so below, inherently what happens below affects what happens above, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. And so if you are able to harness this act to create something in your life, you are then able to make it happen on things that are outside of the act itself. So you can impact the outside world using this interior act because of the way it works through a metaphysical formula perspective. As well, within this act, we are looking at a lot of energy. As humans, we have energetic bodies known as the body of light. And when we are doing things such as dancing, running around, doing rituals, singing, all these things, and of course the act itself, we are raising energy and we are creating even more energy than we already have. And our energy is interacting, right? And so you have this interaction of two people's energies coming together like a circuit. And that energy itself, even besides the fact that this is a replication of the divine process, sheerly the fact that it has a lot of energy can be used to get results as well. And so you can focus that energy towards specific things. And so a technique that has been really popularized by movements like chaos magic has been to take the moment where this act peaks. I can't wink. Take that moment, and as that moment happens, focus and intention. And so you're taking this explosion of energy and then putting it towards an intention to manifest that intention into being. And because this is using energy instead of the act itself, this can also be done through solitary practice. Put together what that means. Really anything that could create that energetic overload. Of course, it is more powerful with another person. It's much more powerful, but you can still kind of utilize that energy to get things that you desire and to make change in the material plane. Now, the next thing I want to discuss is the use of fluids in these practices. So as women, speaking to the ladies here, our body goes through a cycle every single month where you go and you represent the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, right? You begin your month right after your menses. And your menses are when death happens and there's blood and you release blood. And obviously blood has a lot of energetic power to it, but it also is sort of the end of the cycle, and so it is charged throughout the month. And then you go through a period of infertility to where you peak at fertility when you ovulate, and then your fertility decreases and you have your period. This is very much paralleling the cycle of the moon, where it goes from new to crescent to full, and then it diminishes and is new again, and it's that cycle. So our cycle, as we understand it, is also going to be a very powerful correspondence with these actions, with the different fluids that women create throughout the month having different metaphysical components to them and different power. You do not need any acts either by yourself or with other people to utilize these fluids. You can use them as a correspondence on their own. There is a long history of women on their menses using their menstrual fluids for metaphysical purposes, specifically within love and domination magic. It is believed that that blood is one of the most powerful correspondences possible. As well, when you are going throughout your cycle, you are often going to benefit from a period of like purification and rest. There was an idea in some ancient cultures called the red tent, where women, when they were on their menses, would kind of retreat from society and turn inwards and focus on shadow work. And then after that would end, they would go through a period of purification and then kind of go their entire month like oriented around the phases of their fertility as a important part of their spiritual practice to see as another cycle of life. And that is a great thing you can do. But understand, even if you're not doing that and you're not really delving into those divine feminine mysteries, those different fluids are going to represent different things going forward. Now that I've talked about this through a practical magic lens, I do want to talk about this through a mysticism lens, which I think a lot of people miss. I think a lot of people see sex magic and mysticism as like diametrically opposed things. They see sex magic as an inherently left-hand path thing. And that is because in our society, we kind of think weird things about this stuff. And so we see it as inherently something that can only be done on the darker left-hand path side of things. And that's simply not true. In fact, mysticism and sex are highly linked, even in the Abrahamic traditions. And I'll get to that. I'm gonna give you guys a curveball. So to start in the pagan world, because I think that's what a lot more people are familiar with, in terms of pagan mysticism, you can understand the Wheel of the Year a lot better when you understand the Wheel of the Year as a cycle of fertility. So the Wheel of the Year is that cycle that we go through every single year, often broken down into the Wiccan Sabbats. And it is a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Interestingly, the Thelemic religion has a calendar that is very similar, that is very seldom discussed, that kind of goes through this same cycle. But basically, there are certain holidays, specifically ones like the ones in spring, that are fertility festivals. And then you will look to, say, Yule, which is that winter holiday, and that will be one about death. And so you can watch the woods around you go through the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, right? They are born right at the beginning of spring, and then they grow through summer, and they start to age through fall, and they die in winter. And historically, pagan religions would incorporate sexual mysticism on holidays that related to fertility. So you can even incorporate that as a way to understand nature more, because obviously if you are pagan, you want to understand the natural magic of the world and be closer to the natural cycles of life. As well, when it comes to certain goddesses, I did mention Inanna at the beginning, but I think she's a great example. Using sexual practices as a way of mystic devotion can be very, very powerful. These acts are very deep and emotional and heavy, and they often get reduced to something that's just like ordering Chinese takeout in the modern world, but they have a lot of energetic weight to them, right? You carry this energy with you. You sync your energy with another human being. And so devoting all that energy to a divine goddess can be incredibly powerful as a form of devotional offering and sacrifice. But to do this, you really do need to crack into the mindset that the modern world has, that this is just like a thing you do, and instead re-enchant it and remember that there is a mystic value to these acts. They're not just like a random thing you do. Like, you are connecting with someone, you're interacting with their energy, and you're also interacting with their metaphysical energy. Some people have weird ideas that because you are interfacing with someone else's body of light when you and do the act with them, which is true whether it's ritualized or not, that you develop weird like tethers to people. Not necessarily. The idea of like soul ties being immediately caused by the act are not true. I don't believe that theory, but it is a metaphysical act, and that should be remembered as you engage with this act and think about this act. Because we often always divorce everything from metaphysics, and I think that that is a harmful mindset that, especially for people who are practitioners, is going to hold them back. So re-sacralizing sex can be really, really beneficial to people who want to engage in these mysteries. As well, one thing that is practiced by some people is invocation. Now, you should only do this with specific deities. There are some deities where this is not going to fly. But with specific deities, you can invoke them and have the partner you're with, provided they are an occultist as well, invoke another deity, and you can have this act as a devotional act to those two deities and to represent their mysteries. Because one of the things that is done in ceremonial magic is known as dramatic ritual, which is where you will do almost kind of like, they're not like plays because you are invoking real spirits, but you'll be like reading these specific hymns and stuff. And you can do that through this act with a partner occultist where you can invoke two different deities and have a really profound metaphysical experience together. And you're not doing it to manifest a thing, you're doing it to get closer to those gods. As well, I want to talk about how within initiation in some occult systems, sexual practices are used through invocation and through dramatic ritual. That is absolutely a thing and is something that can be beneficial, because when you are engaging in this stuff, you are your most raw and primal form of yourself. You are stripped of all attachments to the material world. You are wholly in the moment. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is sexual magic in a Abrahamic framework. So this is something that makes people really weirded out, but it is a thing. If you look at how Christianity and Judaism specifically discuss this stuff, they actually give it a lot of metaphysical weight. Now, they do obligate it to be done with a married partner, but there is still something about how when you, specifically in a Christian context, engage in the act, you are actually reaffirming your vows, because there are several vows within a Christian marriage ceremony that obligate you to engage in the act and create life. So you are actually doing a religious ritualistic act when you have sex with someone who you are married to under a Christian framework. Within Judaism, the Kabbalah speaks extensively about ideas like the Shekinah, which is the feminine form of God, and does discuss these practices. It's much harder to find information on because a lot of it is in Hebrew and not translated to English, but that information is out there and is part of that religious practice. So it's not just a pagan thing, and interestingly, a lot of people are engaging in these practices and not knowing it. And the very last thing I want to discuss, one last thing, is how within ritual you can represent the act without actually doing it. So if you have an athame and a chalice, you can actually bring those two together, because the athame represents the divine masculine and the chalice the divine feminine, and bring them together and basically replicate this action. So you never actually need a partner or by yourself. Like, you can just use correspondences. Fire and water are great ones. Specific tarot cards can work. Invoking a god and a goddess, like really anything that brings these two principles together can be a microcosmic representation of this stuff without ever having to like go out and find someone to do things with. And actually, you know what, there's one last thing I want to add. I wasn't planning on saying this, but I do want to bring this into conversation. If you are engaging in these actions with another person and you are conscious about it, you should tell them it is right. It is not right to, like, you know what I mean, engage in these actions and not tell them, especially if the actions are using energy in order to manifest. Because if you are taking someone's energy in order to achieve a goal, like that you have you've hit that energetic moment at that climactic moment, and you don't tell them that's what you're doing, you are engaging in a form of psychic vampirism, or like stealing their energy for your gain. And that is very dubiously ethical and can create miasma, and a lot of people have a lot of problems with that. So please communicate with anyone you're engaging with. Have a conversation, and there's a lot of really great reading material on this subject out there. So you can learn a lot more. There's a lot more techniques that I just couldn't get to in this video for reasons of time and reasons of I am trying to not get demonetized. Probably will, but I wanted to at least try. So I hope this was helpful. If you liked me, please like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you subscribe for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel, and you'll never need to know any of these things ever again. Though with this topic, you might want to. But also on Patreon, I host an extra video every single month. I post a ritual guide, which is bonus rituals that I've written every single month for you that are based on the current astrological transits. And if you're in high enough tier, you can do one-on-one patron meetings with me, where I can give you mentorship and guidance about the esoteric. I also host the podcast, The Postmodern Iconoclast, which is on this YouTube channel, so you don't even need to leave. You can literally just click my name in the corner there and see it. But it also is on most podcasting platforms, and I am on Substack, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Telegram, Threads. I don't think there's anywhere else I am. I'm also hosting a group trip through Trova Trips. If you want to travel with me, that information is all going to be in the description as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have an amazing day, night, mid-afternoon, mid-evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are.